Chapter 217. Ling Feng walked over and said, Boss, I Bazi and Xianping found the people in the garden. Although they don't have much aptitude, they still have some spiritual roots. I wonder if they can be used? Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. It's fine as long as they have spiritual roots. How can there be so many people with good aptitude? Those with good aptitude have already been taken away by the major sections. You guys won't even have the chance to find them. But why did you bring the old man here? Shi Xiaotian glanced at the three of them and laughed in his heart. Ling Feng was startled and said, Boss, didn't you say it's better to have more people regardless of age? Did I say that? Yu Qianqiu was stunned and immediately came to a realization. Oh, I think I did say that before. Forget it, it's better than nothing. We can bring them back to cultivate, and they'll be stronger than ordinary people. With so many people, we'll be worried about our food supply. It's better to bring them back, and not do anything else. We can be self-sufficient. By the way, little Tian, when you have time, help me gather some grains and seeds of all kinds of fruits and vegetables. I have great use for them. The three of them didn't know what he was going to do. Shi Xiaotian nodded and agreed. Yu Qianqiu instructed again. Ling Feng, Bazi and Xianping, continue to search for people with spiritual roots. I'll still say it. I'll take as many as you can regardless of age. It doesn't matter if your aptitude is lacking. I have a way to solve it. But remember, keep a low profile, and don't let the other sex find out. I've been chased out of supporting Immortals Island. Many people want to kill me. This general's residence is my stronghold now. Don't let it be exposed. The three of them looked at each other, and Shi Xiaotian asked in surprise, Why were you chased out of supporting Immortals Island? My ass. Yu Qianqiu stood up and patted Shi Xiaotian's shoulder. He smiled and said, Xiaotian, I've taken revenge for you in Ongquangsung. The head of Ongquangsung, Lu Chongqing and his grandson Lu Zhenguang, were both killed by me. They were shocked again. Shi Xiaotian swallowed his saliva and said, Boss, you're not lying to me, right? You killed Sect Master Ongquangsung? How is this possible? Damn it. Do I look like a liar to you? Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, AI, if I didn't kill him, would I have been expelled from the supporting Immortal Island? Sigh. The days of having someone to back him up were over. From now on, he would have to rely on himself. Everyone keep a low profile. They were completely speechless, but they still didn't quite believe it. How could the Righteous Path's 6th-ranked sect leader Ongquangsung be killed so easily? It's good to be expelled from the sect. In the future, I can come here whenever I want. Oh right, Xiaotian, get me a set of ordinary clothes. I can't wear the supporting Immortal Island's clothes anymore. I'll definitely get into trouble if I stroll around the capital. Yu Qianqiu said. Shi Xiaotian's eyes lit up. From Yu Qianqiu's words, he could tell that Yu Qianqiu was going to be here often. He immediately agreed happily, and went out to find clothes for Yu Qianqiu. Ling Feng and the other two were also overjoyed. As for Yu Qianqiu, he flashed into the garden, and stored the 100 or so people in the garden into Utopia. After giving some instructions to Guan Yu, Shi Xiaotian ran over excitedly with a set of clothes. He said, Boss, try this set of clothes to see if it suits you. This is my second brother's clothes. His figure seems to be about the same as yours. Yu Qianqiu took a look and saw that the embroidered clothes, jade belt, and thick-soled boots were all prepared. He threw them back and snappily said, I just told you to keep a low profile. Why did you give me these clothes? Are you afraid that others won't notice me? He waved his hand and said, Just give me the clothes of your general residence's servants. Servants' clothes are for you to wear? Shi Xiaotian was stunned. Ling Feng and the other two felt a little uncomfortable looking at the silk robes they were wearing. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, Why are you so long-winded? If I say it's fine, it's fine. Left with no choice, Shi Xiaotian could only run back to get him a set of servants' clothes. When Yu Qianqiu put on a slanted hat and adjusted his brand new black clothes, he instantly revealed a satisfied smile and said, Not bad, not bad. These clothes are really low profile. Xiaotian, from today onwards, I'll be your follower. I don't dare. Shi Xiaotian hurriedly waved his hand. He thought, if you become my follower, what if one day you're not happy? Where am I going to find spirit stones and spirit pills? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Don't be long-winded. In front of others, I'll be your follower. Behind others, I'll still be your boss. That's settled. Ling Feng and the other two exchanged glances and said, Xiaotian, find us a set of servants' clothes too. Why? Is it fun to be a servant's follower? Yu Qianqiu glared at them and said, Do you want to go to the capital's 10,000 flower house to be a pimp? The three looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. After staying in the capital for so long, the three naturally knew what kind of place 10,000 flower house was. Xiaotian, speaking of 10,000 flower house, I've never been there before. Why don't you take me there now? Yu Qianqiu tidied up the crooked hat on his head and sighed. At this time, he had already put away the storage bag and the sword on his back. To him, it didn't matter if these things were on display or not. If he wanted to take them out, it would only take a thought. The three looked at each other and didn't know if he was telling the truth or not. Looking at his serious expression, it didn't seem like he was joking. Sure, Xiaotian asked tentatively, Boss, you really want to go to 10,000 flower house? Heh, that place is a lively place. Oh, lively? Yu Qianqiu nodded his head seriously and said, I was just saying it casually. Since you want to go, as your follower, I naturally have to accompany you. AI, if you want to go then hurry up. Let's go. Let's go. Don't waste time. The three were completely speechless. Yu Qianqiu pushed Sure Xiaotian out in a hurry. As he walked, he didn't forget to look back and warn the three who followed him. What are you three doing here? Go do what you need to do. Pillar of State General's residence. Yu Qianqiu had lived here for more than a year, so he was very familiar with the place. In the wealthy and powerful mansion, the two of them walked out of the back garden one after another. The servants who passed by saluted when they saw Sure Xiaotian, but when they saw the servant in new clothes behind him, they all felt that he was very unfamiliar. They all secretly muttered, Why haven't I seen the third young master's servant before? Sure Xiaotian walked confidently in front, while Yu Qianqiu followed behind with his hands behind his back. His aura wasn't any weaker than the former's, but it seemed that his awareness as a servant was a little lacking. When the two of them were about to pass the main hall, a beautiful woman walked out. The two women on her left and right were also quite good-looking. Behind them was a group of servant girls. Sure Xiaotian slowed down and said in a low voice, You know my mother. The two beside her are my eldest sister-in-law and second sister-in-law. They married a few years ago, so you haven't seen them before. The two of them inevitably bumped into each other. Sure Xiaotian bowed and said, Mother. Eldest sister-in-law, second sister-in-law. The servants on the other side also bowed to Sure Xiaotian. Li Hongyang looked at her son lovingly. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at the servant behind her son, and was slightly startled. Not only did this servant not bow to her, he actually stood there with his hands behind his back. Yu Qianqiu looked at her and nodded with a smile. When Li Hongyang saw who it was, she was immediately shocked. When the woman beside her saw Yu Qianqiu, she frowned and said, Uncle, is this the new retainer? Why isn't he bowing to mother? She immediately turned around and shouted, Housekeeper, who brought this servant? Why doesn't he know the most basic manners of servants? Someone come. Bring him to teach him the rules. Chapter 218. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. Not only him, Li Hongyang and Sure Xiaotian were also dumbfounded. Not far away, a man in his 50s jogged over and repeatedly smiled apologetically at the woman. He shouted at Yu Qianqiu in a low voice, Still not coming with me, Mr. Yu. The housekeeper was Sure Shenqing, a retainer of the general's office. He had met Yu Qianqiu many times in the past, so he was familiar with him. He more or less knew what kind of person Yu Qianqiu was. When he saw Yu Qianqiu's face clearly, he was dumbfounded. Close to 10 years had passed, and his own appearance had already aged. However, Yu Qianqiu still looked the same, just that his appearance had become more mature. He naturally recognized him with a single glance, and was immediately at a loss as to what to do. Shenqing, this has nothing to do with you. Take all the servants away. I haven't seen my wife for many years, So we have something to talk about. Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and smiled. He ordered the housekeeper to leave. Shi Shunqing nodded repeatedly. After getting Li Hongyang's permission, he took the group of servants away. Seeing that the housekeeper didn't listen to her, the woman was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said, "Does the general's office have any rules?" "Wanshi, don't be rude." Li Hongyang stopped her. The other woman next to her quietly watched everything that happened just now. The servant in front of her was obviously not simple. How could a normal person order the housekeeper of the general's office? "Mother, these servants are getting more and more unruly. If you don't teach them a lesson, they will bully their master in the future. Mother is kind, so you can't be cruel. Why don't you let your wife discipline them instead?" The woman seemed to have lost a nerve in her head and was still chattering. The other woman had already pulled her a few times, but she still didn't notice. "Shut up." Li Hongyang also scolded her wife. In her impression, Yu Qianqiu was like a god. Back then, he just casually drew a path and trapped her eldest son for a few days. How could she offend him? "Damn it. If you continue to nag, I'll sell you to Africa." Yu Qianqiu was speechless when he met such a woman. He pointed at the woman's pretty face and asked Shi Xiaotian, "Xiaotian, is this your sister-in-law? Is it Shi Youtian's wife or Shi Yintian's?" Shi Xiaotian looked at him with a wry smile and thought to himself, "If you don't wear this servant's clothes, how could you have caused such trouble?" Li Hongyang took over the conversation and introduced awkwardly, "Mister, please don't be offended. This is Bao Wanshi, the wife of my eldest son, Yu Tian, and this is Situ Hui, the wife of my second son, Yin Tian." "Bao Wanshi." Yu Qianqiu sized her up and laughed coldly. "She doesn't live up to her name. Why did Yu Tian choose such a shrew? In my opinion, he should just divorce her." His words were not polite at all. The people at the side were speechless. Shi Xiaotian really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Bao Wanshi was so angry that her face turned pale. She said with a trembling voice, You? Wah." She was so angry that she cried. Yu Qianqiu didn't have a good impression of shrewd-like women. What he said just now was to anger her. Seeing that she was crying, he immediately became interested in watching a good show. He jokingly said, "Cry, continue to cry. It's too soft, louder." Bao Wanshi did as he said, and began to cry loudly. Her voice was really sharp, and she even made a lot of body movements. Situ Hui, who was at the side, tried to comfort her, but it was useless. Li Hongyang felt a headache coming on. Shi Xiaotian quickly pulled Yu Qianqiu back and said, "Boss, I'm begging you. Please be lenient with your words. She is my sister-in-law after all. Just give me some face, okay? Who made my wife cry?" A voice that pretended to be angry was heard with a hint of laughter. Yu Qianqiu turned to look. A person walked out from the entrance. He wore a scholar's hat and a vermilion official's robe. Who else could it be but the Shi family's boss, Shi Yutian? However, he seemed much more mature than before, especially with the two small tufts of beard on his mouth. "Wah!" Bao Wanshi acted as if she saw her savior. She wiped her tears and rushed into Shi Youtian's arms. She began to complain about all her grievances. "Humph, there's such an evil servant. Wanshi, don't cry. I'll teach him a lesson for you." Shi Yutian let go of his wife and walked over with large strides. "Haha, interesting." Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but clap his hands and laugh. He said, "Shi Yutian, we haven't seen each other for so many years. I didn't think you'd become a flower protector. I'd like to see how you'll teach me a lesson." "How dare you?" After Shi Yutian saw the person's face clearly, the words he was about to shout got stuck in his throat. His face turned red. When he came to his senses, he hurriedly lifted the hem of his official robe and ran over to pay his respects. "Yutian greets Mr. I haven't seen Mr. for many years. You've been well." No matter what their relationship was like in the past, meeting old friends was always a happy thing. Yu Qianqiu supported him and said with a smile, "I don't live as well as you do, hugging your wife and flirting in public. Tsk, what a simple life." "Mister, you must be joking. Yutian only covets some romantic relationships. How can it compare to Mr.'s celestial life? After all these years, Mr. is still as elegant as ever. Yutian really envies you." He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Back then, he painstakingly pursued the path of cultivation. In the end, the path was ethereal, and he woke up from his dream. He finally gave up and settled down to marry a wife and focus on his career. However, he couldn't help but have a cultivation complex in his heart. He sighed to himself. His third wife was the one he was envious of. He often wanted to chat with his third wife, but it was difficult to see her leave the forbidden area of the back garden. At this moment, Bao Wanshi was no longer crying. She was looking at her husband with her mouth wide open. No matter how stupid she was, she could sense that the servant in front of her was not ordinary. Shi Yutian waved at her and said, "Wanshi, come and greet Mr." Bao Wanshi didn't know where to put her hands. She walked over gracefully and saluted with a flushed face. "Bao Wanshi greets Mr. I was reckless and offended Mr. just now. Please forgive me, Mr." Si Tuhui, who was at the side, was very obedient. She didn't need to be reminded, and came over to bow. Si Tuhui greets Mr. Humph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly at Bao Wanshi and ignored her. Instead, he raised his hand at Si Tuhui, indicating that she didn't have to be so polite. He smiled and said, "Are you Yin Tian's wife? I'm old acquaintances with your husband." "Wife? Husband?" This mister's words were a little rude. Si Tuhui muttered to herself, but she nodded with a smile and retreated to the side. Shi Yutian saw that Yu Qianqiu was ignoring his wife's apology. He immediately gave his third brother a look, asking him to plead for leniency. Shi Xiaotian understood and walked over to pull Yu Qianqiu. He smiled and said, "Boss, my sister-in-law actually has a good heart. She's just a little outspoken. Don't bother with her." That's right, that's right." Shi Yutian walked over and said, "Yutian apologizes to Mr. on my wife's behalf. I hope that Mr. will forgive my wife this time for my third brother's sake." Actually, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't really bother with an ordinary person like her. However, women sometimes relied on their status and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In order to be less long-winded in the future, he couldn't help but scare her a little. He immediately pointed his finger and shouted, "Bao Wanshi, I'll spare your life this time for the sake of the Shi brothers. If you dare to do this again, I'll definitely take your head. When that time comes, it'll be useless no matter who pleads for mercy. Hurry up and thank Mr." Shi Yutian tugged at his wife. Bao Wanshi felt very wronged. How could she be treated worse than an outsider in her own home? However, she still thanked him honestly. This matter was settled just like that. "Bless the heavens." Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and sighed. "Xiaotian and I are going to Wanhua brothel. Do you want to join us?" Shi Xiaotian almost vomited blood. He looked at his mother, who was glaring at him guiltily. Si Tuhui's face was already red. Bao Wanshi's eyes were wide open. Shi Yutian kept smiling foolishly at Yu Qianqiu. This question was very difficult to answer. In fact, he really wanted to go out with Yu Qianqiu. It was not for the fans of Wanhua brothel, but purely for Yu Qianqiu. However, his wife, mother and sister-in-law were all at the side. How was he supposed to answer? Yu Qianqiu joked, "Are you going or not? Why are you smiling foolishly? Give me an answer." Shi Xiaoyan's expression twitched. "Boss, you just want to see the world in chaos. You're not allowed to go." Bao Wanshi opened her arms and stood in front of Shi Yutian. She glared at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Even if you kill me, I won't let him go to that place with you." "Oh, I didn't know that she was a feminist." Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "Yutian, since your wife doesn't want you to go, then forget it. Xiaotian, let's go." With that said, he walked straight out. Shi Xiaotian lowered his head and followed behind, as if he was looking for ants. "Hey, Mr. Wait." Shi Yutian was a little anxious. "If you dare to go, I'll fight it out with you." Bao Wanshi jumped onto Shi Yutian and hugged him tightly. She didn't care about her image anymore. Not far away, Yu Qianqiu's laughter could be heard. Si Tuhui's eyes revealed a trace of curiosity. Who was this person? Chapter 219. The speed at which news spread in the cultivation world was very fast. It was much faster than the speed at which a horse could run, or a pigeon could carry a message. Once the news of Yu Qianqiu being expelled from the supporting Immortals Island was released, it caused a huge uproar. Of course, an ordinary core formation disciple would not be able to cause such a huge uproar. The main reason was that the things he did had a huge impact. 100 Flowers Valley beat up the grandson of Sect Master Ong Kwangsung, and Hat Island beat up the son of Deluo Sect's Sect Master. This guy seemed to be targeting those with status. Ong Kwangsung announced that Sect Master Ong Kwangsung and his grandson had been killed by Yu Qianqiu. Ong Kwangsung offered a reward of 1 million high-grade spirit stones to anyone who could provide information about Yu Qianqiu. The reward for taking Yu Qianqiu's head was 5 million high-grade spirit stones, and the reward for capturing Yu Qianqiu alive was 10 million high-grade spirit stones. As soon as the news of the Azure Light sect was released, the entire cultivation world was boiling. A mere core formation disciple killed Sect Master Ong Kwangsung? It was hard to believe. However, for those from the small sects, 1 million, 5 million, or even 10 million upper spiritual stones were tempting enough for them. Now that Yu Qianqiu didn't have the support of supporting Immortal Island, he was just a core formation cultivator. He was no different from a lowly vagrant cultivator. There was nothing to be afraid of. Therefore, they sent out their disciples to investigate. Even if they did not expect to earn 10 million high-grade spirit stones, it would still be good if they could earn 1 million. Those poor rogue cultivators tried their luck everywhere. However, there was a rumor that Ong Kwangsung's ancestor Qing Nu failed to capture Yu Qianqiu when he confronted Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he allowed Yu Qianqiu to escape unscathed. However, after thinking about it, everyone understood that this was pure nonsense. How could a late-stage transcending tribulation cultivator fail to capture a core formation cultivator? It was a joke and a rumor. Under Ong Kwangsung's request, the entire Cultivation Alliance began to operate. All the righteous sects that joined the Cultivation Alliance would search for Yu Qianqiu in the cultivation world. If necessary, they could kill him on the spot. The Luo sect was especially supportive of this. At this moment, in the Wu clan's ancestral hall of the 4 major clans, the clan heads of the 4 major clans gathered together at the fastest speed. After receiving the news from Wu Sihai, the 4 clan heads weren't surprised that Yu Qianqiu was expelled from Fuxian Island. After the 4 clan heads had a discussion, they issued a secret order to the disciples of the 4 major clans to search for Yu Qianqiu in secret. Once they found him, they were to protect him at all costs until he returned to the 4 major clans. Once this news was out, the evil Dao was the happiest. The righteous sects actually had such an unconventional traitor. Moreover, he was a traitor of Fuxian Island. Moreover, he was such a famous traitor. If he could join the evil Dao, it would be a huge blow to the reputation of the righteous sections. Why wouldn't they do it? As a result, the entire evil Dao alliance began to operate rapidly. All the evil Dao sects had a common understanding that they would protect Yu Qianqiu at all costs when necessary. If any of the sects suffered any losses because of this matter, all the sects would compensate them together. In short, they must not let the righteous sects succeed. 10,000 demons Qiu Wuyuan clamored in high spirits as he personally commanded this leap operation. In an instant, both the righteous and the evil Dao took action. Yu Qianqiu had completely disrupted the entire cultivation world. No one knew if the righteous sects would succeed, or if the evil Dao would be rampant. In the bustling streets of the Huaxia Empire, Yu Qianqiu was wearing black clothes and a small hat. He was dressed like a servant, and was completely unaware of everything that happened in the cultivation world because of him. He was leisurely strolling behind Shi Xiaotian. When he saw the people and carriages passing by and people looking at him with strange eyes, Yu Qianqiu immediately restrained himself. Not to mention anything else, the fact that he was misunderstood by Bao Wanshi at the general's mansion meant that he was not good enough at acting as a servant. Thus, he found a passerby as a comparison. He put down his hands behind his back and straightened his chest. He followed behind Shi Xiaotian with a dejected look. "Boss!" Shi Xiaotian turned around and was stunned. Why did his boss look like a thief? He said in a daze. "Are we really going to Wanhua? F***CK. Have you ever seen a young master call a servant boss? Please act more properly, and call me Little Qian." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Little Qian, are we really going to Wanhualu? Shi Xiaotian said a little unnaturally. Young master, if you say so we will go. Yu Qianqiu put on a servant's smile and thought. Wanhualu is so famous in the capital. I wonder what the difference is between the brothels of the ancient times and the ones in my previous life. I wasn't in the mood before, but now that I'm interested, I'll be letting myself down if I don't take a look. When did I say I wanted to go? It seems like you're the one who said you wanted to go. Shi Xiaotian was speechless. He originally wanted to get a carriage, but he didn't know why Yu Qianqiu rejected it and insisted on walking. Wanhualu should be considered as the #1 brothel in the Huaxia Empire. There were branches in all the bigger cities in the empire. To be able to obtain the title of Wanhua and make so many men flock to it like ducks and spend money like water, it definitely had its own unique points. Yu Qianqiu came because of this point. This was the #1 brothel in the world. Compared to the #1 brothel in the world, Fuxian Island, it seemed like more people knew about the former than the latter. The night was about to turn dark. On a small street that wasn't the main street, the moment one entered the street, one could smell the fragrance of pink powder. This small street was abnormally bustling with people walking to and fro, rubbing shoulders with each other. It was a street where one could eat, drink and be merry. This was all thanks to the #1 brothel in the world, Wanhualu. When the two walked in, Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in admiration that this was a first-rate place to spend money. Shi Xiaotian's face also became lively. Suddenly, there was a crowd of people rushing towards the largest building in the middle of the street. That building was decorated with colorful makeup, and it was even more beautiful than a bride's. The fragrance of pink powder was coming from that building. Needless to say, this was definitely Wanhualu. The two of them were swept by the crowd. Shi Xiaotian turned his head and looked at the crowded carriages on the street. He was secretly glad that he didn't take a carriage. Yu Qianqiu patted the shoulder of a person beside him and asked, "Brother, why is it so lively here? Is Wanhualu like this every day?" That person was trying his best to squeeze forward. Hearing this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise and said, "One look and I know it's your first time here. Today is the day that the #1 courtesan of Wanhualu will appear. Normally, you won't be able to see it. It only happens once a month. If you're lucky, you might be able to see it." After saying this, he ignored him and continued to squeeze forward. The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan? How beautiful would she be? Yu Qianqiu was instantly interested. He secretly circulated his true essence, trying to push through the crowd. At this moment a shout came from the street. "All of you get out of my way!" The crowd turned around and saw an officer riding a large horse leading a large group of soldiers. They began to part the crowd and cut in. The commoners didn't dare to block their way, and the crowd began to squeeze to the sides again. The entrance of the 10,000 flower house was immediately surrounded by a group of soldiers wielding shining long sabers. Although there were soldiers guarding the entrance, the carriages on the street still couldn't enter. Hence, there were more soldiers protecting a group of people who got off the carriages and walked towards Wanhualu. Looking at the clothes of these people, they were probably nobles. Seeing these people easily pass through the crowd with their heads held high, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to throw a few bricks at them. But after thinking about it, he held back. The two of them squeezed into the crowd and waited for more than 2 hours. After the soldiers had probably escorted hundreds of nobles in, they finally retreated and guarded the entrance of Wanhualu, not letting random people in. Then, a few rich people who were escorted by their servants were allowed in after negotiating with the tortoise bus at the entrance. As for the people squeezing on the street, they were basically commoners or people who weren't rich or powerful, so they were naturally prevented from entering. They could only watch from the outside. Damn it! The #1 courtesan of the world's #1 courtesan. This daddy here hangs out with the third young master of the National Pillar General's estate, who holds great military power, but I can't even enter a brothel. Damn it! Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. He glared at Shi Xiaotian, who was shaking his head and smiling bitterly. He was very unhappy. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. He raised his hand and shouted, "The third young master of the National Pillar General's estate has arrived." Chapter 220. His voice was loud and clear. The moment the name Pillar of the State General was announced, it immediately produced a miraculous effect. The clamoring crowd immediately quietened down. Schwa! Everyone turned their heads to look in one direction. Becoming the center of attention, Shi Xiaotian was momentarily stunned. He never expected Yu Qianqiu to make such a move. At the entrance of the Thousand-Flower Brothel, the military officer holding the saber by his waist looked over in shock. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed as a house servant, was naturally unable to attract his attention. Seeing Shi Xiaotian in his luxurious robes, he was a little shocked. As the third young master of the Pillar of the State General's residence, although Shi Xiaotian rarely appeared in public, he had still seen him on a few occasions. As a soldier, the Pillar of the State General, who had been fighting at the western borders for many years, was undoubtedly the idol of the entire Huaxia Empire. He also had a very high prestige among the citizens of the empire. Especially last year, when the general's 2 million soldiers split into 6 groups and defeated the 6 countries, forcing the 6 countries to sign an armistice, it pushed the reputation of the Pillar of the State General to the peak. In their hearts, the Pillar of the State General was the guardian of the Huaxia Empire. Out of the way! The military officer shouted excitedly. The citizens also had a look of surprise on their faces as they squeezed to the side, afraid to block Shi Xiaotian's path. The military officer waved his hand, and the soldiers guarding the Thousand-Flower Brothel immediately split into 2 groups, rushing into the path that the citizens had vacated. They lined up neatly on both sides of the path. The military officer strode towards Shi Xiaotian and waved his hand to open his cloak. Holding the saber in his hand, he knelt down on one knee and said in a clear voice, "This general is the City Guard Patrol Commander Yuan Fei. Greetings, third young master." "Greetings, third young master." The 2 rows of guards and the guards of the Thousand-Flower Brothel all knelt down in unison. It was unknown which citizen knelt down first, but the citizens of the entire street all knelt down with difficulty. Because it was simply too crowded, they all shouted, "This humble citizen greets third young master. This humble citizen greets third young master." Their shouts rang out one after another, and it was clear that they were all heartfelt respect. Shi Xiaotian was a little embarrassed. Coming to a brothel in the name of the National Pillar General's residence was not something to be proud of. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the Pillar of the State General to have such high prestige among the soldiers and citizens. He couldn't help but feel regret for his actions earlier, to have caused the citizens to love the Pillar of the State General in such a manner. His conscience really couldn't be justified. After all, he was a soldier in his previous life. To be able to command such respect from the citizens, it was impossible to do so without experiencing 1,000 miles of bloodshed. Yu Qianqiu was truly ashamed to have tarnished the reputation of a general like this. The nobles and the rich who had entered the 10,000 flower house were also shocked by the continuous shouts outside. Third young master? Which family's third young master had come to cause such a big commotion? They sent their servants to the door to inquire. All the soldiers and civilians on the street knelt down. Only the 2 young men dressed as a master and a servant stood out, making the servants speechless. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but roll his eyes at Yu Qianqiu with a little complaint. The latter smiled awkwardly. Shi Xiaotian circulated his true yuan and said loudly, "My fellow citizens, please get up. I, Shi Xiaotian, am not worthy of such a big greeting." His voice surged through the entire street, drowning out everyone's greetings. The soldiers and commoners were shocked. What a loud voice! As expected of the son of the National Pillar General. Like father, like son. Everyone thanked him and said, "Thank you, third young master." They got up with difficulty. "Commander Yuan, please get up." Shi Xiaotian reached out to help Yuan Fei up. When the latter heard the former's loud voice and saw him coming to help him up, his competitive spirit was secretly aroused. He wanted to see if he had real skills, or was just using his voice to scare people, who knew that he didn't even have the strength to resist, and was lifted up just like that. Yuan Fei couldn't help but be shocked. What great strength! His gaze swept past the sword hanging on Shi Xiaotian's waist. No wonder he was brought up in such a manner. Seeing their commander stand up, the soldiers also stood up. Yuan Fei waved his hand and said, "Third young master, please." "You're welcome." Shi Xiaotian cupped his hands and walked forward under Yuan Fei's lead. Yu Qianqiu followed behind dejectedly, stepping into the myriad flower house. Yuan Fei stayed outside to continue guarding while the pimp led the master and servant in. The lanterns were lit, and the myriad flower house was filled with guests. Alluring women were walking around with plates of fruits, wine and all kinds of delicacies. Hearing that the third young master of the National Pillar General's residence had arrived, the nobles who were already seated gathered downstairs to greet him. In terms of status and rank, there was no need to greet him. Many of the nobles had a higher rank than the National Pillar General. However, he was the one who held the strongest military power in the empire. He was someone who could make the entire Huaxia Empire tremble with the stomp of his foot. He was much stronger than those nobles who only had titles in name only. Shi Xiaotian gracefully greeted the crowd. One moment it was that little prince. The next moment it was this little prince. Shi Xiaotian handled the situation with ease. Yu Qianqiu nodded to himself. As expected of someone from the upper class, today, he had finally witnessed the power of the National Pillar General's residence. He had a new plan in mind. They were in an enclosure, with a big performance stage in the middle. There were 2 levels of seats for spectators. The upper level was an open single room, while the lower level was a circle of single-table banquets. This should be the place where the courtesan Belle would sing and dance tonight to celebrate peace and prosperity. Shi Xiaotian arrived late. The single room upstairs had already been occupied. However, there was no need to worry. Naturally, there were people who knew their place and left one for him. The 2 of them were in a single room on the 2nd floor, one sitting and one standing. The one standing behind Shi Xiaotian was, of course, Yu Qianqiu. A servant couldn't possibly sit with his master in public, could he? Wan Hualu had arranged for some prostitutes to come over. However, Yu Qianqiu felt that they were too unattractive. He found an excuse that the third young master didn't want to be disturbed and chased them out. He was used to seeing beauties in the cultivation world. Naturally, he wasn't interested in the so-called beauties here. If it wasn't for the fact that he still wanted to see the courtesan that everyone was fighting for, he might have turned around and left. Soon the performance on the central stage began. For a moment the sound of zither, flute, and drums rang out. More than a dozen graceful women danced gracefully, causing the crowd to cheer. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that they were going to do a striptease or something. Who knew that after wandering around for a long time, there wasn't anything interesting at all. One group after another went down, and another group changed into different styles. They didn't have the awareness of a brothel at all. He really didn't understand why those princes and nobles were cheering. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could throw a grenade down and let those women who were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws quickly get off the stage. He wanted that courtesan to come up and take a look as soon as possible. If she didn't look good, then they should leave as soon as possible to avoid wasting time. This brothel was too boring. The music played by those musicians didn't have any passion at all. When it fell into his ears, it was like a lullaby. It made him sleepy and yawn repeatedly. After an unknown amount of time, just as he was in a semi-conscious state, the commotion around him woke him up. The lonely and light sound of the zither entered his ears, and it was quite refreshing. When he looked again, the surrounding princes and nobles were all leaning against the railings to watch. "The courtesan is coming out," Shi Xiaotian said softly. He also walked to the railings to watch. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had been waiting for the stars and the moon. Finally it was here. He also followed. In the depths of the lanterns, a figure dressed in a light gauze and thin red palace dress leisurely walked over. A long white jade hairpin was inserted into her jet-black hair bun. The 2 ends of the hairpin were pulled up by a red veil that covered her face. Her pretty face was faintly discernible. It was hard to see clearly, but it was exceptionally alluring. Her white and tender lily-white hands were hugging a plain zither. One side of her ample chest was lightly pressed against it, making the other side even more abruptly perky. The red veil covered her perky buttocks, trying to cover her slender jade legs. However, the boundless spring scenery was always inadvertently revealed when her jade legs strode forward. The beauty dressed in red lightly walked onto the stage. She put down the jade zither on the table that had already been set up by someone. She nodded slightly to the surrounding people, and then sat down peacefully. The red veil on both sides of her buttocks was quietly pulled open, revealing her white and tender thighs. Good, someone clapped and shouted. Immediately, it caused a loud commotion. Everyone agreed one after another. Yu Qianqiu finally became spirited. He clapped with all his might. Damn it! He finally saw someone who was pleasing to the eye. Although he couldn't see her face clearly, just based on her figure alone, it was already top-notch. The single room for the two of them was in a good position. The courtesan happened to be facing the two of them, so they could slowly admire her. 10 jade-like fingers pressed down on the strings of the zither, gently evoking a quiet and exquisite sound. The surroundings immediately quietened down. Yu Qianqiu nodded. At first, he sounded a little sad, but it was still a little interesting. At least he was able to continue listening. The sound of the zither reverberated faintly. The face under the red veil suddenly sang softly. I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness. The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face instantly froze. Then it started to twitch. Chapter 221. It was a completely different tune from the Huaxia Empire, with a different style and singing style. However, it was undeniable that it was indeed pleasant to the ears. It was completely different from the current high-pitched tunes that were popular. It was simple and mellow, yet moving. Even those ignorant and incompetent hedonistic sons could immediately understand the meaning behind it. Gradually, the image of a white fox trapped in love for 1,000 years appeared in everyone's mind. White fox. Shi Xiaoyan's face was also filled with shock. How did this popular tune in the cultivation world spread to the myriad flower house in the secular world? Moreover, the person who composed this tune was right beside him. The two of them looked at each other, completely losing the mood to look at beauties. They looked at the Huakuei again. Although they couldn't be sure, they had a feeling that the other party was sizing them up intentionally or unintentionally. This Huakuei was probably not simple. The surrounding nobles had previously been drooling over the Huakuei's beauty, but now they were completely immersed in the Huakuei's singing. Even after the song ended, they still couldn't extricate themselves. After a long time, their exclamations turned into cheers. They all felt that this trip was not in vain, so they rewarded the Huakuei with gold and silver ingots. However, the Huakuei seemed to be indifferent to the praises and rewards of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian were no longer in the mood to stay. They turned around and were about to leave quietly. Suddenly, a coquettish voice transmitted into Yu Qianqiu's ears. I didn't expect that the abandoned disciple of Fuxian Island, that the entire Cultivation Alliance, is looking for would actually be involved with the pillar of the state generals. Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks, and suddenly turned to look at the Huakuei downstairs. Who else could it be if not her who was able to sing the White Fox? The other party could actually transmit a voice. It was clear that her cultivation was above the tribulation stage. No wonder he couldn't tell. Who was this person? Unfortunately, his cultivation was not at the stage where he could transmit a voice. He couldn't question her in public, could he? He could only reveal a stern and questioning gaze. Seeing his reaction, Shi Xiaotian also stopped. He didn't know what he was going to do. Yo, the third son of the National Pillar General, was actually an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Hee. Yu Qianqiu, you've really found a good hiding place. Yu Qianqiu heard Huakuei's laughter again. Don't look at me like that. You want to know who I am? Then let's meet at the top of the highest mountain in the western suburbs of the capital. Come quickly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that the Cultivation Alliance won't find out about the relationship between you and the National Pillar General's residence. Hee. After Hua Kuei finished transmitting her voice, she picked up her zither and quietly walked away amidst the cries of pain from the crowd. She only left the crowd with a graceful and extremely alluring back view. Many people beat their chests and stamped their feet, asking everywhere why the Oiran Queen left after just one song. No one could answer. Those who wanted to use force were also stopped by others. Since Myriad Flower Tower was able to establish itself in the Huaxia Empire, they naturally had a powerful background or strength to back them up. They weren't people they could afford to offend just because they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes as he watched Hua Kuei leave. He whispered into Shi Xiaoyan's ear, "I have something to attend to. I'll be heading out first. You play by yourself." With that, he left quietly. Shi Xiaotian looked at the departing Hua Kuei, then at the departing Yu Qianqiu. He sat down thoughtfully. After leaving Myriad Flower Tower, Yu Qianqiu found an empty alley and released a flying sword out of thin air. He stepped on the sword and quickly flew towards the western suburbs. The people of the capital naturally couldn't see it in the dark. Even if they did see a stream of light, they would think it was a dazzling light. The highest mountain in the western suburbs was steep. It should be a place with few people. On the mountain, the chirping of insects could be heard. The silver moonlight covered the mountain peak. The rocks on the mountain peak were exposed and could be considered flat. As the mountain wind blew, a few old pine trees swayed under the moonlight. Yu Qianqiu landed on his sword. He flipped the sword in his hand and carefully looked around. Even if the other party was an expert at the end of the tribulation stage, he was confident that he could escape. It wasn't a big place. Under the moonlight, it was clear that the other party hadn't arrived yet. The terrain at the foot of the mountain was dangerous. In the depths of the forest, it seemed a little eerie. Yu Qianqiu looked at the dim lights of the capital. He stood on the mountain peak and welcomed the mountain wind. He held his sword with both hands and quietly waited for the arrival of Myriad Flower Tower's Hua Kuei. Ding ding dong dong. The sound of a zither suddenly sounded behind him. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He suddenly turned around, and his gaze fell on the few old pine trees. A woman wrapped in a red veil sat on the top of the tree and played the zither. Who else could it be other than that Hua Kuei? Damn it! Trying to scare me. Aren't you afraid of pricking your but while wearing so little? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? How do you know me? Hua Kuei didn't answer. Instead, she played the zither and sang. Yesterday was like the flowing river in the east, far away from me. Today my heart is in chaos, how troublesome. Did you ask me to come here just to listen to you play and sing? Yu Qianqiu waved his sword and pointed at her. Hua Kuei was completely focused. It was as if she was deeply immersed in her own song. Only when the song was finished did she open her fingers and press on the zither to stop the lingering sound. She sighed and said, Yu Qianqiu, I heard that the song I played and sang today was composed by you? Crazy, Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. So what if I composed it? So what if I didn't? Nothing much. On the treetop, Hua Kuei's figure flashed, and under the moonlight, he suddenly appeared beside Yu Qianqiu, leaving behind several afterimages. The latter was startled, and he fiercely jumped back. Whoosh! Nearly 100 flying swords suddenly appeared, and they protected him from all directions. Hua Kuei, who was holding the zither, was startled. She didn't see how Yu Qianqiu could produce so many flying swords at once. She also didn't see him carrying a storage bag. She chuckled and said, What are you nervous about? But you do have some skills. No wonder you could kill the sect master of Ongquangsung. I'm a little curious. How could that half-baked Hao Wuwei teach a disciple like you? That's right, he might have learned it on supporting Immortal Island. But Hao Wuwei doesn't know how to play the zither or sing. What do you mean by good or bad? I don't know him. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. You don't know Hao Wuwei? Oh, hee, I get it. You should know the Hao Sansi of Ongquangsung, right? Isn't he your master? Hua Kuei laughed. What does my master have to do with you? Hua Kuei smiled and said, I heard that you offended the sect master of Ongquangsung because of your master's death. That's why you joined supporting Immortal Island. Yes, You beat up the grandson of the sect master of Ong Kwangsung in the Hundred Flowers Valley. Then, you beat up the son of the Deluo sect master at Hatter Island. Then, you killed Lu Chongqing and his grandson. It looks like you're still brooding over the death of your master. How Sansi? Sigh. I didn't expect How Sansi to have taken in a good disciple. He's always thinking about avenging his master. It's only right for a disciple to avenge his master. There's no need for you to flatter him. I find it strange. You didn't invite me here to have a heart-to-heart talk, did you? Yu Qianqiu sneered. Only right? Hee. How Sansi has finally done something right in this life, so his death isn't unjust. Huakui giggled again, laughing so hard that his body trembled. Su Qin, who was in her arms, stood on the ground. She lifted an arm and removed the veil that was tied to her hairpin. Her charming face smiled at Yu Qianqiu. So familiar. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He searched his mind and suddenly remembered a person. He couldn't help but exclaim, "You're the 100 Charms Enchantress of the Demon Illusion Palace." Chapter 222. Oh, little brother, you have a good memory. I didn't expect you to remember our first meeting. It's not in vain that I've been paying attention to you all these years. Haha. Allure Seductress spread her arms and swept her fingers over the strings of the zither. After a string of homophonic notes, she covered her mouth and laughed. Her breasts rippled, and the red muslin wrapped around her swayed with the mountain wind. The color of her lower body was faintly discernible. She was really charming when she smiled. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and thought, amazing. Among all the beauties he knew, he had never seen a woman like Allure Seductress. She had the charm of a mature woman to the extreme. No wonder she was called Allure Seductress. However, he didn't know whether she was a friend or a foe, so he couldn't be careless. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and said expressionlessly, "Why have you been paying attention to me?" Allure Seductress stopped laughing and shook her head. "Are you really confused or just pretending? Don't you know the relationship between me and your master?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. He had heard the conversation between her and Lu Wanwan in the Spirit Stone mine. If Hao Wuwei was really his master, Hao Sansi, then the relationship between her and his master was ambiguous. He might even have to call her his master's wife. However, it seemed too ridiculous. How could a dirty old man like his master pick up such an arrogant girl? Besides, Allure Seductress was the master of the Enchanted Palace. Unless she was a pervert. Allure Seductress seemed to have seen through his mind. She didn't wait for his answer, and told him a story of the past. At that time, Allure Seductress wasn't the master of the Enchanted Palace yet. When she went down the mountain to gain experience, she happened to meet Hao Wuwei, who was also going down the mountain to gain experience. At that time, he wasn't called Hao Sansi. One was righteous and the other evil, so they started to fight. However, Hao Wuwei was only in the early stage of core formation at that time, while Allure Seductress was in the middle stage of nascent soul. There was a huge gap between their cultivations. As a result, Allure Seductress was not only injured, but also captured by Hao Wuwei. The Allure Temptress had always looked down on the hypocrisy of the righteous, so she teased Hao Wuwei by saying that she wouldn't kill him as long as he was willing to join her Phantom Palace. However, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. Every time he opened his mouth, he would call her Demoness. As a result, he had angered the Temptress of 100 Charms. Thus, she tormented him until he was on the verge of death. But even if he was on his last breath, Hao Wuwei would rather die than submit. He continued to curse and swear loudly. Allure Seductress was shocked. She didn't expect that there would be a man who wasn't afraid of death in this world. She had never seen a man like this before. Her attitude gradually changed from disdain to ridicule, then to anger, and then from shock to admiration. Such a man was indeed rare in the cultivation world, and it could be said that she was convinced. Then a dramatic change occurred. Allure Seductress beat Hao Wuwei to death, but in the end, she was the one who healed him. Under her careful care, Hao Wuwei's mood also changed during the healing process. He didn't expect that this seemingly seductive and absurd woman had such a side to her. As a result, there was a problem. When a man and a woman spent a long time together, once they had a good impression of each other, it couldn't be stopped, and the two of them developed feelings for each other. To be exact, the two of them fell in love. In the cultivation world, it was absolutely forbidden for righteous and evil to fall in love with each other, especially in the righteous. Hao Wuwei, who had recovered from his injuries, returned to Kwang-sung uneasily. He didn't dare to mention this matter to his master. However, a lure seductress was a woman who dared to love and hate. This might be the difference between evil and righteous. A lure seductress couldn't bear the pain of lovesickness, so she secretly went to Kwang-sung to find Hao Wuwei. As a result, Hao Wuwei was scared to death and advised her not to come to Kwang-sung anymore. His words almost made a lure seductress die of anger. "I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? A man who isn't even afraid of death is afraid of this?" She was so angry that she simply revealed her whereabouts in Kwang-sung and quickly escaped. Her willfulness didn't cause any trouble for herself, but it caused Hao Wuwei to suffer. When the matter was exposed and he was reprimanded by the sect, Hao Wuwei honestly confessed what had happened and almost lost his life. If it weren't for the fact that his master happened to be the sect master of Kwang-sung and wanted to protect him, there wouldn't be Hao Sansi in the future. In fact, back then, the sect master of Kwang-sung thought very highly of this disciple, and even wanted to train him to be his successor. However, this matter was completely ruined. The sect master was heartbroken and reprimanded his disciple severely. He also changed his name to Hao Sansi, which meant that he should think twice before doing anything. In the end, he couldn't avoid the punishment and swore never to have any contact with the lure seductress again. He even made a fuss and faced the wall to reflect on his mistakes for 10 years. After that, a lure seductress was a little regretful, but she held on. In the end, the two of them really didn't see each other for decades. By coincidence, when the two of them met again, a lure seductress couldn't believe her eyes. Hao Wuwei, who was upright and outspoken in the past, had actually become a sloppy old man. She found an opportunity to stop him alone and interrogate him. However, he said that his name was Hao Sansi, and that he didn't know a lure seductress or Hao Wuwei. She mistook him for someone else. After that, he smiled amiably and left. That's right, a lure seductress cultivated a kind of seduction technique, which had the effect of retaining one's youth. However, with Hao Wuwei's cultivation, he shouldn't have aged so quickly and become so much older than her. Even if he did age quickly, how could it be so easy for two people who had been in love for so many years to mistake each other? Both of them weren't ordinary people. Moreover, how could she hide the inexplicable sadness that flashed through Hao Wuwei's smiling eyes? After she spent a lot of effort to figure out what had happened to Hao Wuwei, a lure seductress cried bitterly for 3 days and 3 nights. She brought all the misfortune to Hao Wuwei. After that, she begged Kwang-sung several times, wanting to meet Hao Wuwei. However, how could Kwang-sung agree to her request of a demon? It was already good enough that he didn't kill her. Therefore, she tried to force her way in several times. But how could a lure seductress break in alone? She almost lost her life in Kwang-sung's hands. After understanding that one person's strength was too insignificant for Kwang-sung, a lure seductress made up her mind and concentrated on her cultivation. After another decade, she sat on the position of the palace master of the enchanted palace as she wished. When she finally firmly grasped the entire enchanted palace in her hands and was about to visit Kwang-sung again, she didn't expect that Hao Wuwei would be killed. A lure seductress felt like she was struck by lightning. Everything she had done all these years was for Hao Wuwei, who knew that it would end up like this. For a moment, a lure seductress was filled with boundless anger. However, the culprit Daoyuo sect was not something that her enchanted palace could afford to offend. Therefore, she picked Kwang-sung to vent her anger first. Later, when Kwang-sung's spirit stone mine was attacked, Yu Qianqiu personally experienced it. After that, enchanted palace was wiped out by Kwang-sung in retaliation. This was also something that the entire cultivation world knew. This story was a bit too melodramatic. After listening to it, Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He didn't know what to say. No wonder Lu Wanwan said that he was Hao Wuwei's disciple. So this was what happened. Sigh. That old man really couldn't tell. He really didn't expect that there would be such a romantic past. This allure seductress was actually Master's woman. Then wouldn't she really be on the same level as Master's wife? Chapter 223. Hee. What? You didn't expect this, right? The allure beauty laughed like a silver bell. I sigh. With a thought, Yu Qianqiu's flying swords disappeared, removing his defense. Scratching his head, he walked in front of the allure beauty, smiled bitterly and bowed. Disciple Yu Qianqiu greets Ma am. For a moment, he still found it hard to associate how Sancy, that old man, with this charming woman. But the two of them had an affair. He had to accept it even if he didn't want to. From the old man's previous signs, he still had this woman in his heart. Otherwise he wouldn't have given up on himself to that extent. If he didn't accept it, his conscience wouldn't be at ease, and the old man wouldn't die in peace. Yo, that's a good boy. The allure beauty obviously liked the word Mayam. With a charming smile, she walked closer and teasingly hooked his chin with her finger, and even put her arm around his shoulder. That pair of bouncy and plump breasts rubbed against his shoulder from time to time, causing Yu Qianqiu to smile bitterly. Was this woman really as infatuated as she said? Sigh. What a stunner. Damn it. It was really irritating. Unfortunately, he wouldn't do that kind of thing even if he was beaten to death. Cough cough. That. Ma'am. Why did you go to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? Yu Qianqiu changed the topic, and took the opportunity to stand further away. He didn't want to cause a nosebleed in front of Mayam. What do you mean? What do you mean I went to a place like 10,000 Flower Brothel? 10,000 Flower Brothel originally belonged to the Enchanted Palace. What's so strange about me, the palace master, being in my own territory? The allure beauty laughed. What? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. So Enchanted Palace also runs a brothel? That's not right. As far as I know, before Enchanted Palace fell, this 10,000 Flower Brothel already existed. You brat, your words are really unpleasant. The temptress rolled her eyes and sighed. Forget it, you're quite pleasing to the eye. I'll tell you some secrets. Did you think that after Ong Kwangsung razed the Phantom Palace to the ground, I would have no place to stay and could only hide in a brothel? Was that not the case? Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. This cheap mistress had really gotten into character. The 100 Charms beauty rolled her eyes again and continued. You should know the Pink Sect, which is ranked 10th in the Devil Dao and ranked 9th, after my magical illusion palace fell, right? The Red Pink Sect was known for its charm techniques. The 10,000 Flower House in the secular world was opened by the Red Pink Sect. Other than being the illusory demon palace's palace mistress, I'm also the sect master of the Pink Sect. You don't know this, right? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. To be exact, he was confused by this complicated relationship. The 10,000 Flower House originally belonged to the Magical Illusion Palace, and now it was opened by the Pink Sect. After sorting out his thoughts, he finally understood. He really didn't expect that this mistress had a double identity. She was actually in charge of 2 big sections. The 100 Charms beauty said disdainfully. Outsiders thought that the Magical Illusion Palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao, couldn't withstand the attack of the Righteous Dao's ranked 6th, Ong Kwangsung, and collapsed just like that. But who knew that my Magical Illusion Palace had diverted more than half of its strength to run the Pink Sect? It was really because of the sudden incident that we were caught unprepared by Ong Kwangsung and suffered a big loss. Otherwise, with Ong Kwangsung's strength, it wouldn't have been so easy to succeed. I don't understand this. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, why did your Magical Illusion Palace divert more than half of its strength to run the Pink Sect? Wouldn't it be better to spend more effort to improve the Magical Illusion Palace's strength? Otherwise, it wouldn't have suffered losses under Ong Kwangsung's hands. Do you think it's easy for me, a woman, to sit in the position of Magical Illusion Palace's palace master? The 100 Charms beauty asked back, and faintly let out a breath and said, since I, a woman, have taken the position, I naturally have to come up with means to convince my subordinates. For a long time, my Magical Illusion Palace has always been ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. In the past, which sect master didn't want to improve their strength and didn't want to take a step forward in the ranking? But if you send them up, the sects above them will inevitably come down. Let's not talk about the righteous Tao's reaction for now. Once you threaten the top-ranked sects, then your sect will inevitably be suppressed by the higher-ups, and it will be very difficult to take a step forward. So when I first took office, I began to quietly divert people to develop the pink sect. The effect is very obvious. Those top sects won't spend too much effort to pay attention to such a small sect. With the support of my magical illusion palace, the pink sect climbed to the 10th place in just a few years. With this credit, it also allowed me to sit firmly in the position of magical illusion palace master. Master's wife is really wise and powerful. This disciple admires you. After flattering her, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Master's wife told me such a big secret. Aren't you afraid that this disciple will leak it? Leak my secret? The 100 Charms beauty looked him up and down, looking at him like she was looking at a stupid pig, and sneered. You should worry about yourself. The Deluo sect wants to get rid of you as soon as possible. Ong Kwangsung has even put up a bounty for your capture. The entire Cultivation Alliance is looking for you everywhere. And the Devil Dao is also looking for you everywhere. Unless you continue to hide in the National Pillar General's office and continue to be a servant, don't show your face in the cultivation world. Once your whereabouts are exposed, you should be prepared to be killed by the righteous Dao or join the Devil Dao. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He naturally didn't know about this and couldn't help but smile and said, Master's wife, are you trying to scare me? I'm just a core formation realm disciple. How could I cause such a big commotion between the righteous and Devil Dao? The 100 Charms beauty casually plucked the strings of the zither beside her and leisurely said, the person who provides Yu Qianqiu's whereabouts will be rewarded with 1 million high-grade spirit stones. The person who takes Yu Qianqiu's head will be rewarded with 5 million high-grade spirit stones. And the person who captures Yu Qianqiu alive will be rewarded with 10 million high-grade spirit stones. If you don't believe me, go to the capital and shout, I am Yu Qianqiu. Then you will know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Yu Qianqiu looked towards the direction of the dimly lit capital, and his face twitched. He didn't have the guts to try. In fact, he didn't even need to try to know that he killed sect master Ong Kwangsung. So the other party definitely wouldn't let him go easily. It's fine to be a coward once in a while, but it's not in my character to be a coward all the time. As the saying goes, the first to strike gains the upper hand, and the last to strike suffers a calamity. Since both the righteous and Devil Dao are after me, then come. Who's afraid of who? If worst comes to worst, I'll just go back to Utopia and farm. Besides, I haven't fully used my troops yet. A bunch of dogs, do they really think I'm easy to step on? Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and lightly snorted, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his face. The 100 Charms beauty had been sizing him up with a smile. Mistress, you didn't call me here just to tell me this, did you? Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked. Of course not. The 100 Charms beauty smiled and said, I also didn't expect to meet you today. I'm telling you this because I know you want to avenge your master. And I also want to avenge your master. That's why I'm telling you this, and... Yu Qianqiu asked with an inquisitive look in his eyes. The 100 Charms beauty deliberately paused, then chuckled and said, and I also know that you definitely have someone helping you. I heard that when you killed Lu Chongqing in Swallow City, you brought hundreds of men in black, and there seemed to be experts at the end of the tribulation passing stage. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for you to kill Lu Chongqing with your ability. Sigh. Back then, when I was at the Spirit Stone Mine in Ongkwangsung, I planted a strand of divine sense on you. Who knew that it would be dispelled in the blink of an eye? It seems that your background isn't simple. Chapter 224. So she was talking about this. It seemed like there were quite a few sects that knew about this. Yu Qianqiu praised disapprovingly. Master's wife is really well informed. You even know about this. When it comes to being well informed, I'm afraid there's no sect in the entire cultivation world that can compare to my pink sect. You must know that the purpose of my pink sect opening 10,000 flower houses in various places is to facilitate the investigation and transmission of information. Just like the trouble you've caused in Swallow City, I'll know within an hour, the 100-charm beauty said proudly. Yu Qianqiu was slightly taken aback. The myriad flower brothel had opened almost everywhere in the Huaxia Empire. Thinking about it carefully, the net-like myriad flower brothel was indeed very useful for gathering information. But how much manpower and money did it take? Gathering information in the cultivation world was not something that ordinary people could do. No wonder the enchanted palace was taken down by Ong Kwangsung. It turned out that it had been emptied long ago. But why did she say this to me? With a thought, Yu Qianqiu asked doubtfully, Master's wife, could it be that you want us to join forces and avenge Master together? Smart. 100-charm beauty smiled and said, I also want to see what kind of people are behind you. Why can't I find anything with my information channels? As he spoke, he leaned over with his body fragrance, as if he had no bones. Yu Qianqiu was really afraid of her. She would come over and touch him at the slightest provocation. It was true that he wanted to take advantage of her, but he couldn't do anything serious. So he didn't know who was taking advantage of who. He could only pretend to think of something, and quietly took a step away. He frowned and said, I do have some people behind me, but I'm afraid it won't be easy for Master's wife to meet them. What? Master's wife? I told you so many secrets. Are you still going to keep them from me? 100-charm beauty crossed her arms and smiled. Naturally, it became an attractive scenery. Master's wife, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu said solemnly, Master's wife wants to meet them. Unless you are willing to give them all your strength, they won't meet you. This time, 100-charm beauty couldn't laugh anymore. Give them all my strength. Wasn't this a joke? She stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes and frowned. Yu Qianqiu, tell me honestly, are you being controlled by the person behind you? Let me tell you, even if your master was still alive, he wouldn't want you to sacrifice yourself to avenge him. What was this cheap master's wife thinking? Who was controlling who? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned, and then he felt a little touched. It seemed that she really had deep feelings for his master, Hao Sansi. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so concerned about him. He shook his head and said, Master's wife, you are mistaken. I am not controlled by them. I am just very good friends with them. Seeing that he was unwilling to speak, the allure beauty didn't force him. She sighed and said, It's not that I don't want to let go of the authority in my hands, but the human heart is unpredictable. Before I take revenge for your master, it's impossible for me to hand over the power in my hands to others. Actually, I've been tired of this kind of life for a long time. I can't compare to you men. No matter how high my cultivation is, I'm still a woman. I don't want to live forever either. Her tone was full of helplessness. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. He actually wanted to take control of the allure beauty's power, but after hearing her words, he could only give up on that idea. The moon was enchanting, and the night breeze was refreshing. The two fell into a short silence. Master's wife, can you find the locations of all the spirit stone mines in the Luo sect and Ong Kwangsung? Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked. What do you want? The allure beauty suddenly turned around and asked. Hee. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, Since you dare to have designs on me, you have to pay a price. Didn't you attack one of Ong Kwangsung's spirit stone mines in the past? This time, I want to learn from Master's wife. The allure beauty frowned slightly and said, You want the locations of all the spirit stone mines in both sects? Why? Is it very difficult? Yu Qianqiu asked. The allure beauty shook her head and said, The information on the spirit stone mines of all the major sects is readily available. I can give it to you anytime you want. However, since I caused a ruckus in the past, all the sects have strengthened their defenses around the spirit stone mines. If you have designs on so many places at once, I'm afraid it will be very dangerous. Seeing that she was so concerned about him, Yu Qianqiu was once again moved. He smiled and said, Don't worry, Master's wife, I am very afraid of death. I will not joke around with my life. I have my own plans for the specific operation. The allure beauty nodded and said, All right, I will organize it for you tonight. If you want, you can come to 10,000 Flower House to find me. Then disciple will thank master's wife in advance. Yu Qianqiu saluted, then looked at the sky and said, disciple still has something to do, so I will take my leave first. Finished speaking, he summoned a flying sword and was about to leave. However, the Allure Beauty laughed and said, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Are you afraid that I will eat you? Damn. She was just being serious for a while. Why is she here again? Yu Qianqiu looked around. This really was a good place to do dirty things. There was no need to be afraid of people disturbing him. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, could it be that master's wife wants disciple to accompany you to see the scenery? Not today. Next time, I will find a chance to let you accompany me to see the scenery. The Allure Beauty giggled nonstop, walked closer and said, you are leaving just like this? Are you not going to give master's wife a gift? Master's wife, whatever you want, just say it. As long as it is within my means, I will give it to you. Yu Qianqiu said helplessly. Meeting this kind of master's wife, there was really nothing he could do. He was really afraid that she would ask him to marry her. So should he refuse? The Allure Beauty didn't answer for a long time. Instead, she leisurely paced around a few times. The moonlight vividly showed off the curves under her thin veil. Yu Qianqiu took a breath and looked to the side. I heard that the 2 songs circulating in the cultivation world were composed by you. Why don't you compose a song for master's wife as a gift? This won't force you, right? The Allure Beauty finally said the gift she wanted for their first meeting. Since master's wife has asked, how can disciple dare to disobey? Master's wife, please wait a moment, let me think about it. After finishing speaking, Yu Qianqiu also let out a sigh of relief. So this is what you want, I will just casually pirate a song for you. Seeing him slowly pondering, the Allure Beauty's eyes lit up. It should be known that Yu Qianqiu's 2 songs had spread throughout the cultivation world. Everyone would regard them as classics, especially women, who especially liked them. However, there were not many people who knew that it was composed by this Yu Qianqiu in front of her. Unexpectedly, as soon as she asked, he actually agreed. Seeing him in deep thought, the Allure Beauty thought that he was racking his brains to come up with ideas in his mind. However, she didn't know which song he was thinking about. Of course, the song couldn't be too avant-garde. It definitely wouldn't work if he came up with something like haha, use nunchakus. It must be something that ancient people could understand and suitable for her. After a long time, she saw him nodding as if he had understood something. He walked to the Allure Beauty's zither, grabbed it, walked to a rock on the cliff, sat cross-legged, put the zither on his knees, and slightly adjusted his mood. Then he said indifferently, Master's wife, this song is for you on behalf of Master. The Allure Beauty was stunned. Just when she was about to say something, she heard the sound of the zither, so she had to calm down and listen. As her thoughts sank along with the prelude, Hao Wuwei's appearance in the past appeared in front of her eyes, as if he wanted to tell her something. At this time, Yu Qianqiu had already started to sing along with the sound of the zither. Don't mention the past again. Life is full of ups and downs. Chapter 225. In the myriad fragrance garden of Fuxian Island, Ferdinand had been suffering. The father-daughter relationship that had improved with great difficulty had now plummeted back to its original state. Furong once again regarded her father as a stranger. She even avoided him everywhere, and didn't want to see him. The cause of the matter was naturally that Yu Qianqiu, who was expelled from Fuxian Island. Ferdinand was also a shrewd person. He naturally saw that his daughter had already lost her chastity to that bastard. However, it was useless even if he was unhappy. Who asked his daughter to like him? He could only wander around the sect every day, hoping to get more news about that brat. Furong didn't have the mood to cultivate these few days. She lay on the bed in the room all day, staring at a purple gold necklace in a daze. This was refined by Yu Qianqiu for her. There was a small transparent crystal ball hanging on the purple necklace. There was a little red in the small ball, which was very beautiful. Yu Qianqiu once told her that the red inside was a drop of his blood. She didn't know how it was put in. You don't want me anymore? You're going to abandon me? Furong looked at the necklace in her hand and muttered to herself. Her tears wet the pillow again. She didn't know how many times she had repeated this sentence these few days. Who doesn't want you anymore? A familiar voice suddenly appeared in the room. Furong turned her head to look. Yu Qianqiu, who was dressed in black and wearing a crooked hat, was looking at her and laughing. Furong sat up abruptly and rubbed her eyes a few times. She thought she had seen wrongly. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "What? You don't even recognize me, your husband?" Yu Qianqiu. Furong's eyes lit up. She immediately ran down from the bed barefooted and directly jumped onto Yu Qianqiu. She hugged him tightly and didn't let go. She buried her head and cried nonstop. Yu Qianqiu hugged her, but with both hands, and touched it. He'd scared and said, "Why are you full of bones? Have you not eaten for a long time? It's not as comfortable as before." Hearing this, Furong immediately stopped crying and got down from his body. Using her hand to feel his body, she frowned and said, "I seem to have lost some weight. Don't you like it?" Sigh. Yu Qianqiu let out a long sigh and carried her to the bed. He crouched down, grabbed her feet that were dirty from stepping on the ground, and carefully patted them clean. He picked up the shoes under the bed and helped her put them on while saying, "My family's Furong is pretty, but if you're as thin as firewood, then you're not pretty. In the future, remember to eat more. Don't think that you can stop eating just because you've reached the core formation realm. Have you seen those old guys on Fuxian Island who often don't eat? Let's not talk about being old, dry, and skinny. Do you think you'll look good like that? I don't like it anyway." Furong thought about what he said, and a withered old face appeared in her mind. If she also became like that? Furong shuddered at the thought of it. She hurriedly nodded and said, "Then I'll eat more in the future. You can take me away too." Yu Qianqiu's face twitched a little. It wasn't hard to take her away. The key was that there was already a Chu Ping in Utopia, so there was no problem with Bai Suzhen. He just didn't know how Chu Ping and Furong would react when they met. It was better not to let them meet for the time being. After thinking it through, his expression suddenly became serious. He sat side by side with her and said, "Furong, I want you to do me a favor." Furong, who was previously crying, now seemed to have become a different person with Yu Qianqiu by her side. She nodded excitedly and said, "What do you want me to help with? Do you need spiritual herb seeds? I'll ask my father for it. If he doesn't give it to me, I'll help you steal it." In her impression, every time he asked her for help, it was nothing more than getting spiritual herb seeds. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched again. "With your level, you can steal things from Myriad Fragrance Garden? Wasn't it because that old fellow Ferdinand turned a blind eye to it?" He coughed and said cautiously, "I don't want you to help me with this. I want you to stay in supporting Xian Island and help me be a spy." "What is a spy?" Furong's eyes widened in surprise. Yu Qianqiu acted as if he was serious and whispered in her ear. After Furong heard it, her expression also became serious. She nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'll write down all the news from supporting Xian Island. I'll tell you when you come." "Okay. Then I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll leave first." Yu Qianqiu stood up and said, "Wait." Furong hugged him and said shyly, "Don't you miss me?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned, but he immediately understood. Aya, this girl used to be afraid, but now she's tasting it again. He looked around and chuckled. "So it's here? It's not convenient. It won't be good if someone hears us." Furong bit her lip and said with a red face, "We'll be fine as long as we don't make a sound." "Is that so?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head. Then he put his mouth next to her ear and said with a sinister smile, "Then let's try it." His words were polite, but in fact, his hands were already helping Furong undress. As soon as Yu Qianqiu returned to Utopia, he went straight to Guan Yu's room in the military camp. He took the black clothes from Guan Yu and asked while changing, "How's the new battle plan going?" "No problem," Guan Yu said in a reporting tone. "According to your request, they've been trained to the high standard of ending battles quickly. Chen Feng has also provided enough qi recovery pills, according to your request, and they've been distributed to everyone in the army. Each person has 2 storage bags with the capacity of 3 rooms. Very good. Chapter 226. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and saluted back, saying, "Everyone please sit." With that said, he walked to the end of the long table and sat down. Guan Yu walked to where Yu Qianqiu was supposed to sit. The two of them were facing each other, so their heads had been turned. Originally, Guan Yu was unwilling. Logically speaking, his current position should be the place where the leader of the team was qualified to sit. However, Yu Qianqiu refused because he had not been here for a long time. Guan Yu was the actual person in charge of the daily training and management here. He had to help Guan Yu establish his prestige because Guan Yu, as the chief instructor, had the lowest cultivation level in this group. Although he was working hard to catch up, it was enough for Yu Qianqiu to firmly grasp this point. It was enough for him to be the spiritual leader of this team. The platoon leaders began to report their respective training situation to Guan Yu. Like an outsider, Yu Qianqiu listened attentively and took advantage of this free time to size up everyone. He was quite satisfied with the results. There was no longer the old-fashioned cultivator expression on everyone's faces. Instead, everyone was in high spirits, looking a bit like soldiers. After listening to the reports, Guan Yu began to announce the operation plan to everyone. It was not easy to come by this plan. Some time ago, Yu Qianqiu had obtained the locations of the various sects' spirit stone mines from the Allure Beauty. He had picked the Daluo sect and On Kuangsung's mines to study. Only then did he realize that the Allure Beauty had prepared a lot of detailed information for him. The guards of each spirit stone mine, as well as their daily routine, were clearly marked. Yu Qianqiu followed the map and personally investigated each and every one of the spirit stone mines of the Daluo sect and On Kuangsung. He did so in secret, not daring to reveal his whereabouts. Finally, he came up with this operation plan. There are 15 spirit stone mines in Daluo sect and 6 in On Kuangsung. Our goal this time is to loot all 21 of them. After Guan Yu revealed his objective, he distributed the Jade Archives to everyone and said, "The Jade Archives in your hands contain detailed information about the various spirit stone mines." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They hadn't expected the battle plan to be so huge. They had to attack 21 spirit stone mines in one go. Expressions of difficulty appeared on their faces. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting quietly at the back, suddenly laughed and said, "Everyone, don't hold back. If you have any opinions, feel free to voice them out. Our goal is naturally to better complete this mission." Someone immediately stood up and said, "Leader, I'm from the Exalted Sect, so I have some understanding of their spirit stone mines." Ever since the Phantom Palace attacked on Kuangsung's spirit stone mines, the defenses of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines have been strengthened. Every spirit stone mine now has an early-stage tribulation passing elder overseeing it. Although our 3 companies have the advantage in numbers and strength, we don't have anyone who can fight against a tribulation-passing cultivator. I'm afraid that even if we manage to take down one mine, we will still suffer heavy casualties. Let's not talk about On Kuangsung. It's basically impossible for us to take down all 15 of the Exalted Sect's spirit stone mines one by one. When he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and gestured for him to sit down. Then he smiled and nodded at Guan Yu. "The leader has already taken your concerns into consideration and has made detailed arrangements to deal with them. Let me brief you all on the overall situation." Guan Yu glanced at the crowd and said in a loud voice, "On Kuangsung has 6 spirit stone mines. Each mine is guarded by a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, 3 mid-stage nascent soul, and 3 early-stage nascent soul cultivators. A total of 15 core formation cultivators, more than 50 foundation establishment cultivators, and 150 miners of varying cultivation levels. This kind of strength is a piece of cake for us. It won't be a problem to take them down one by one. As for the Exalted Sect's 15 spirit stone mines." At this point, Guan Yu's expression became serious. He stood up and continued, "Each mine is guarded by an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator. There are 10 nascent soul cultivators, nearly 50 core formation and foundation establishment cultivators, and nearly 200 minors. Most of them are at the foundation establishment stage. Most of them are at the qi condensation stage like Ong Kwang Sung. If the exalted sect didn't send an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator to guard the mines, it wouldn't be a problem. In view of this, Leader has already set up an early tribulation transcendence cultivator in each of the 15 Daluo sect mines. As soon as we take action, the cultivator will help us tie down the enemy tribulation transcendence expert. And if something goes wrong, Leader will ask Misty Palace's big sister, Bai, to personally take action. I'm sure no one doubts Big Sister Bai's strength. Everyone exchanged glances and nodded. Naturally, this arrangement wouldn't be a problem. However, where did Leader find 15 tribulation-passing cultivators? Could it be that Leader has another force? At this time, someone stood up and asked, Instructor, this is a good idea, but as long as we attack one of the Spirit Stone mines, the sects will be alerted. What if the Exalted Sect and Ong Kwang Sung send a large number of experts? I believe that both the Exalted Sect and Ong Kwang Sung are not people we can withstand. How are we going to attack the other Spirit Stone mines then? Yu Qianqiu sat at the back with a smile and didn't say anything. His subordinate's words were a little discouraging, but he didn't mind at all. This was exactly the atmosphere he needed. Only when everyone was involved would they be motivated to work together. Only then could they make up for the flaws in the battle plan. After all, he wasn't an immortal who could plan everything perfectly. Guan Yu raised his hand and gestured for the man to sit down. He said, Company Commander first, Leader has already considered your concerns. Therefore, there is a very important task for your company to complete in this battle plan. Company Commander first, I want you to find a map of the mines in the Jade Archive. The location marked 1 on the map is the location of the communication array in each mine. Before we attack, you will first take out a platoon of soldiers and hand them over to Leader to command. Leader will lead them to completely destroy the communication array in the Spirit Stone mines. This is to prevent the news of the attack from leaking out. At the same time, all the troops will end the battle as quickly as possible. Do any of you have any questions? Everyone shook their heads and sent their divine senses into the Jade Archives to examine them. Sure enough, there were maps of 21 Spirit Stone mines within. Upon closer inspection, they realized that their training during this period of time had been for the purpose of preparing to attack these Spirit Stone mines. The location marked 1 should be the location of the communication array in the mines. Guan Yu looked around at everyone and said in a deep voice, Since there are no more questions, the attack will proceed according to the latest training method. Dismissed and get ready. Yes. Everyone got up and quickly left the war room to make their own arrangements. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, Yunchang, in an hour, all combat troops will assemble and depart. An hour later, a hurried and loud bugle call rang out in the camp. A group of fully equipped men in black clothes and masks quickly rushed out of the barracks and assembled in 3 groups at the plaza. Guan Yu rode his tall horse and paced back and forth below the stage. Yu Qianqiu stood on the stage with his hands behind his back and looked down at the people below. At this moment, a ray of light descended from the entrance of the camp. Chu Ping'er had arrived with little Wu Qiu. The two of them had been attracted by the bugle call. During this period of time, little Wu Qiu had become attached to this beautiful sister-in-law of his. Every day, she would bring him along to experience the feeling of flying on a sword. The little brat was having a great time. Just as the two of them were about to step into the camp, they were stunned by the formation inside. There were so many people standing together in a strange black color. They were lined up in a neat square formation, but it was so quiet that only the sound of breathing could be heard. A strong killing intent emanated from the camp, forcing the two of them to stay away from it. Little Wu Qiu was startled by the aura. He hid behind his sister-in-law and peeked at his brother, who was looking down at them from the stage. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the two people at the entrance. He raised an arm and opened his palm towards the crowd. After he covered everyone with his divine sense, he shouted in a deep voice, "Depart!" In an instant, all the people on and off the stage disappeared. There was no one left in the camp. Chu Ping, and little Wu Chou didn't dare to go in. They held hands and left in silence. Chapter 227. Behind a barren hillside, hundreds of men in black suddenly appeared. They immediately formed a battle formation and guarded the surroundings. Their movements were quite well trained, and their cooperation was quite tacit. Yu Qianqiu was dressed in black, but he did not cover his face like the others. Only Guan Yu, who was sitting on the horse, was still dressed in a green robe. The wind whistled. Yu Qianqiu looked around. This was the location he had chosen when he was scouting. From a tactical point of view, this place was more suitable for gathering troops than the Spirit Stone mine not far away. Moreover, it was the most suitable place for so many people to advance stealthily. "Follow me in a row." Yu Qianqiu shouted softly. A flying sword gently lifted him up, and he flew along the undulating mountain range. A row of people followed closely behind, all of them moving forward while staying a little above the ground. Guan Yu waved his hand, and the rest of the people quickly dispersed in groups. Only 3 company commanders were left by his side. Yu Qianqiu brought more than 30 people to a call and hid. Kuangsung's Spirit Stone mine was at the bottom of a slope in front of them. They could already hear the shouts of the people inside. If they showed their heads now, they would definitely be discovered by the people on the high ground. He needed to wait for the others to surround the Spirit Stone mine within the stipulated time. Then he would launch a sudden attack. At that time, even if the other party discovered them, it would not be much of a problem. It would be enough to catch them off guard. There were no unusual movements in the surroundings. Obviously, the other people's encirclement had not been discovered by Kuangsung's people. At this time, if someone looked down from the sky, they would see that there were hundreds of black shadows surrounding the Spirit Stone mine. In fact, this method was not very safe. The safest way would be to suddenly appear in the Spirit Stone mine and quickly launch a surprise attack. But the key was that when Yu Qianqiu came to investigate, there was no way to enter the mine. He could only secretly observe from the periphery. He could not run in and leave a positioning mark in a suitable place for everyone to appear instantly. Because Yu Qianqiu had the golden pearl, if he controlled his breathing and remained motionless, it was estimated that no one would be able to discover him. However, if he were to sneak in, there would inevitably be some movement. With his cultivation, it would be very difficult to hide from the nascent soul experts inside. Estimating that it was about time, Yu Qianqiu made a ready gesture to everyone. One of his hands made a gesture of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone stared at the movements of his hands, and the flying sword in their hands was ready. When the last finger was flicked, Yu Qianqiu took the lead and fiercely flew out of the call on his sword. The 30 or so people below him all flew out in a flash. Yu Qianqiu's mind moved. His fingers pointed to a tall wooden building in front of him. Hundreds of flying swords suddenly appeared around him. Xiao xiao! They shot out like a storm. On the wooden building, there were 2 disciples of Foundation Establishment stage leaning on it and watching the scenery with boredom. Although their duty was to observe the surrounding situation and prevent sudden danger, no one would think that robbing the Spirit Stone mine would happen easily. After all, Kuangsung was not an ordinary sect. The Magic Illusion Palace was an example. When they heard the sound and turned around to find the hundreds of cold lights, it was too late. The flying swords were as fast as lightning. The speed of the flying swords was Yu Qianqiu's forte. It was suitable for a sneak attack. Puff puff puff. The hundreds of flying swords smashed the wooden building on the high road. A few puffs of blood exploded and limbs fell. The hundreds of flying swords quickly returned to Yu Qianqiu's side like locusts, protecting his body. More than 30 people quickly flew over the collapsed wooden building. Yu Qianqiu pointed the sword in his hand at a cave. The information provided by the Enchantress of 100 Charms proved that it was the place where the communication array was set up. The dozens of people shot over at their fastest speed. In the meantime, a few Kuangsung disciples ran over. However, They were unable to block the fierce attack led by the nascent Soul Stage black-clothed members. With a single blow, several people were already dismembered. Just as a few people stuck their heads out of the cave to see what was going on outside, dozens of people each took out a spirit talisman and threw it in. A series of loud crackling sounds came from inside, followed by miserable screams. Among the dozens of people, a few people immediately guarded the cave entrance. The rest all rushed in. With the sound of movement, Guan Yu rode his horse to the top of a spirit stone mine. He stroked his long beard and pulled out a large flag from his storage pouch. Hi! With a sound, he inserted it into the mountain top. The hero flag fluttered in the wind. This was the signal for an all-out attack. How dare you? Who dares to provoke me on Kwangsung? A figure flew out from a row of wooden houses in the mine. Then, as if a nest had exploded, all the disciples guarding the mine of Ong Kwangsung flew out. Looking around, a group of black-clothed people had already surrounded the mine in the mountain. From the stunned expressions of many people, it could be seen that they clearly had not reacted to what was happening. A small black flag appeared in the hands of the third company's commander beside Guan Yu. He raised his hand and waved it. More than 100 people belonging to the third company immediately shot into the crowd from all directions and attacked fiercely. Immediately, the scene of the Ong Kwangsung disciples, surrounding the more than 100 people of the third company appeared. For a moment, there was a flash of light, and the sounds of fighting could be heard incessantly. With a cold snort from Guan Yu, a small black flag also appeared in the hands of the second company's commander. He raised it and waved it left and right. The Ong Kwangsung disciples who were fighting the third company in the mine were immediately surrounded by more than 100 people from the outside. A massacre had begun. Ong Kwangsung was immediately attacked from all sides. He was in a precarious situation and could be annihilated at any time. This was a battle without any suspense. The people from Utopia were originally the elite disciples of the top 3 sects in the Orthodox and Devil sects. They had been through a long period of killing in the Demon Ghost region. In terms of fighting, they were top-notch experts among people of the same cultivation level. Half of them were at the nascent soul stage, and half of them were at the core formation stage. After going through military training, they emphasized on mutual cooperation. If one person attacked, there would definitely be 2 to 3 people to help defend. As for Ong Kwangsung, most of them were at the foundation establishment stage. There was only one person who was at the late stage of the nascent soul stage. That person had long been entangled and beaten up by a few nascent soul stage cultivators. The company commander raised his hand and clenched his fist. The remaining 2 platoons immediately narrowed the encirclement to prevent anyone from taking the opportunity to escape. On the other side, after Yu Qianqiu successfully destroyed the communication array in the cave with his men, he immediately ordered the platoon to ignore the other fights and split into groups of 2 to 3 to search for the miners in the various caves. The miners were disciples who did not have any artifacts, so they had to be captured alive. Those who could not be captured alive were to be killed on the spot. The platoon immediately accepted the order and dispersed. Yu Qianqiu flew to Guan Yu's side. It just so happened that the late-stage nascent soul cultivator from Ong Kwangsung saw that the situation was hopeless and tried to break through the encirclement to escape. Yu Qianqiu coldly glanced at him and shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" He did not have a good impression of these so-called elders from Ong Kwangsung. The 3 late nascent soul stage company commanders beside Guan Yu flashed over at the same time, and with a joint attack in midair, they knocked the man down on the spot. The 3 nascent soul stage cultivators who were originally surrounding him also flew up from below, 3 on top and 3 below. The 6 of them attacked in midair, and the late nascent soul stage cultivator from the Azure Light sect let out a miserable scream and turned into a rain of blood. The 3 company commanders flew back to Guan Yu's side, as if nothing had happened. The battle ended very quickly. From the start of the attack to the end, it only took a quarter of an hour. Yu Qianqiu looked at his subordinates in the field. After the battle, not a single one of them died. Only a few of them were slightly injured. With such an absolute advantage, coupled with careful preparation and a surprise attack, they should be able to achieve such a result. Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction and shouted, "Don't hesitate, clean up the battlefield. Take everything you can quickly." The remaining 2 platoons immediately rushed down. At the same time, more than 10 nascent soul stage cultivators flew in all directions to help. The group of people immediately moved. Those on Kuangsung disciples who were lying on the ground and dying were immediately stabbed a few more times. There was no need to leave those who couldn't be saved alive. This was one of the subjects in the previous drill. Then a large-scale sweep began. Storage bags and the like were directly pulled out from the corpses. Even a flying sword that had fallen to the ground was not spared. The platoon that had been ordered by Yu Qianqiu to capture the miners escorted a group of people out one after another. These miners were people who were not well liked in Kuangsung, and they had suffered a lot here. During the capture process, almost no one resisted. At this moment, when they saw the corpses of the Kuangsung disciples on the ground, they did not have a trace of pity on their faces. Instead, when they faced the men in black around them, their expressions were filled with fear, not knowing what would happen to them. The platoon leader came over and reported, "Leader, all the miners that can be captured are here." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand to dismiss him. He leaped into the air and pressed down with his palm. His divine sense enveloped the trembling miners, and the platoon of people instantly entered utopia. He then walked to the side of the Kuangsung disciples who were injured but could still be healed. With a wave of his hand, he sent them back to utopia. After the entire spirit stone mine was swept, everyone quickly gathered together. Guan Yu took out a small black flag with the word "Hero" embroidered on it in gold. He waved his hand and shot it at a stone pillar. With a ding, the black flag was inserted into it. Guan Yu returned to the team. Yu Qianqiu waved his hands, and everyone disappeared. The spirit stone mine of Kuangsung, which had been bathed in blood, was dead silent. Only the shattered corpses on the ground could prove that a fierce battle had taken place here. Chapter 228. In Utopia's military camp. When everyone returned, Bai Suzhen had already led a group of women to stand around them. They were either on the roofs or on the walls, watching over the people who had just been captured. Looking at their dispirited and pained expressions, Yu Qianqiu naturally understood what Bai Suzhen had done to them. "I'll give everyone 5 minutes to rest," Yu Qianqiu shouted from the field. When his gaze met Bai Suzhen's concerned gaze, he shook his head and smiled, indicating that there was no danger. After fighting with all his might, he felt that his primordial energy had been depleted. He immediately lifted his hood and took out an energy recovery pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Everyone smiled and walked to the corner of the square and began to pour out the spoils of war from the storage pouches. It was hard to tell how many things were stored in the storage pouches, but once they were poured out, it was enough to scare people. Hundreds of people shook out the storage pouches, and the things they collected suddenly piled up like a small mountain. There was a large pile of miscellaneous things, especially spirit stones. Bai Suzhen nodded slightly, and the women under her immediately flew over. They took out their storage bags and began to sort out the items. For example, the spirit stones of the lower, middle, and lower grades were all stored separately. When Yu Qianqiu saw that the female disciples were very familiar with many people in the military, a thought occurred to him, and he nodded to himself. Some of them looked like a good match. It was time to allow them to take root here. Only then would they truly treat this place as their home. The soldiers here should be professional. When they were free, they could go home and live their lives. Only when they had a life would there be hope. It was not a long-term solution to rely solely on spiritual rule. As their spiritual leader, he should consider their future. When the 5 minutes were up, Guan Yu gave the order, and the special forces in black gathered again. Yu Qianqiu looked at the people in front of him and said with a smile, "I just thought of something. I feel that many of our members are a good match with the female members of Ethereal Palace. I've decided that after the completion of this mission, men and women can freely interact with each other during their free time. If there's someone who has feelings for each other, they can look for your instructors to register and become Tao companions. What do you guys think? Good, good, good. All the warriors cheered excitedly. Some even shouted, "Long live the leader!" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Damn it! Why do I feel like Hitler? Guan Yu frowned. Why did boss say something like this before the big battle? Wasn't he afraid of affecting morale? Bai Suzhen looked over in surprise. She didn't know why Yu Qianqiu would suddenly have such an idea. The eyes of the female disciples who were tidying up sparkled, and many of them blushed. It was obvious that there was a man they liked in the group. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. After everyone quietened down, he said with a smile, "Let's make this clear first. It has to be voluntary. No coercion is allowed. Otherwise, I won't let him off. Anyway, Utopia is big enough. When the time comes, I'll mark out a piece of land. Those who become Tao companions will have ethereal palace, build a house for everyone. Other than the normal training and missions, everyone can live a normal life. Currently, there are more men than women here, but don't worry. In the future, there will be more and more women in Utopia. After this mission is completed, I'll come up with a plan as soon as possible. Long live the leader! Long live the leader!" A group of old men shouted excitedly. "Prepare to set off." Yu Qianqiu shouted in a deep voice. He, who had been smiling just now, suddenly turned hostile. Everyone was stunned and immediately quietened down. The former opened his palm and enveloped everyone with his divine sense. The group of people in the field disappeared. The battle started again. Due to the careful deployment, there were still no accidents this time, and they successfully took down another spirit stone mine. From the situation of this attack, it was obvious that Ong Kwangsung did not know about the previous attack. This mine was still sparsely guarded. At the same time, it also meant that the battle plan they had come up with was feasible. In less than 8 hours, all of Ong Kwangsung's spirit stone mines had been looted. Yu Qianqiu wanted to see how Ong Kwangsung and the other old fellows would react when they found out that all of their spirit stone mines had been looted. This time, they were much more ruthless than the Illusion Palace. Not only had the 6 spirit stone mines been looted, even the dam miners had been taken away. Even if Ong Kwangsung wanted to start working again, where could he find nearly 1,000 miners? This type of work was not something ordinary people could do. At the thought of this, Yu Qianqiu felt that his anger had been vented. How dare they offer a bounty to capture me? This is the consequence, damn it. Even if you can solve the problem of the miners, you will definitely have to send a large number of people to guard the mines. And the strength you will send will probably not be weaker than this time, right? If the strength is weaker than this time, I don't mind looting again. If I can split a large number of forces from Ong Kwangsung's old nest, I don't mind going up to Ong Kwangsung and taking a bite or two of them. Damn it. In fact, the operation this time was not very smooth sailing. During the last battle, something regrettable happened. 2 core formation stage members died in battle, and their corpses were brought back to Utopia. It was indeed painful for Yu Qianqiu. These people were all elites with rich combat experience. In addition, they had been nurtured for so many years. Although 2 people had died, it did not stop Yu Qianqiu's determination to loot the Deluo sect again. With a command, the troops set off again. At a place not far from the Deluo sect's spirit stone mine, Yu Qianqiu put on a golden mask that he had asked Chen Feng to make before he left. According to the agreement with the Allure Beauty, he found the early-stage tribulation passing elder that she had sent. The elder was quite curious about Yu Qianqiu. He did not know what kind of person was behind the golden mask, and he could not see through his cultivation. He had no choice but to put on the mask. First, it was to distinguish his identity from the other team members. Second, he did not want the people sent by the Allure Beauty to recognize him. If he was recognized, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause for appearing in so many places in a day? When the elder saw the black-clothed special forces that Yu Qianqiu had brought with him, he was shocked. This was the first time he had seen such a group of cultivators in the cultivation world, especially after the attack had begun. With a gesture, hundreds of people separated and regrouped. They did not even need to say a word. The tacit understanding between the attack and defense was simply amazing. In the cultivation world, a person could leave his back to others without any worries. Just how much trust was this? Before the elder made his move, he also put on the black outfit that Yu Qianqiu had given him. Naturally, he was afraid that the people from the Deluo sect would recognize him as an elder of the Phantom Palace. After he fought with the Deluo sect elder, Yu Qianqiu's troops went all out. Since 2 of their comrades had died last time, this time, they were as ruthless as they could be. They would not let go of their opponents until they were completely out of breath. Once the aura of breaking 1,000 armies was unleashed, it would be incredible. The Deluo sect, which was originally thought to be much more difficult to defeat than Ong Kwangsung, was unexpectedly faster than Ong Kwangsung. However, Yu Qianqiu's idea of leaving as many people alive as possible to bring back to Utopia was shattered. All the Deluo sect disciples who were guarding the mine were killed. The battle on Yu Qianqiu's side had already ended. The 2 tribulation stage cultivators fought from the sky to the ground, and from the ground back to the sky. Seeing that the elder sent by the Allure Beauty was unable to defeat the Deluo sect elder, and even seemed to be at a disadvantage, a few nascent soul cultivators rushed forward to help. However, something unfortunate happened. The difference in strength between the tribulation stage and the nascent soul stage was like the difference between heaven and earth. The Deluo sect elder swung his sword in the air, and a sharp sword light slashed out. 2 of the 4 nascent soul cultivators, who rushed forward, immediately turned into a rain of blood. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were bloodshot. He roared crazily, and called the remaining 2 people back. Then Bai Suzhen, dressed in white, appeared in the air. Chapter 229. The 2 early-stage tribulation transcendence cultivators in the air were shocked. They stopped fighting and dodged to the side, sizing up Bai Suzhen, who had suddenly appeared. The Daoyuo sect elder suddenly turned around and fled. This woman's cultivation was unfathomable, and it was obvious that she was not one of them. It was more important for him to stay alive. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and pointed, shouting, "Don't let him escape. I want his life." The men in black felt warmth in their hearts. They could feel the anger in their leader's heart after 2 of their team members had died. Their leader cared about them a lot. Bai Suzhen could naturally feel his current mood. Her pretty face turned cold, and her beautiful eyes looked at the person who had escaped. After disappearing into thin air, she reappeared in front of the Daoyuo sect elder. When the crowd looked from afar, they saw Bai Suzhen grabbing 5 black fiends with her palms and trapping the elder. The elder did not even have the strength to fight back, and he was turned into a rain of blood by the 5 black fiends the moment they clashed. He screamed in pain in the air. Teleportation. Early-stage tribulation transcendence. The elder sent by the Allure Seductress sucked in a breath of cold air, secretly shocked. The people from Utopia knew that Misty Palace's sister Bai was powerful, but they did not expect her to be so powerful that an early-stage tribulation transcendence cultivator could not withstand a single attack from her. They all looked at each other. Little did they know that after Bai Suzhen sensed Yu Qianqiu's anger, her killing intent rose, and she used the mountain-piercing claw. With her late-stage tribulation transcendence cultivation and a high-grade magic treasure, dealing with a mere early-stage tribulation transcendence cultivator was naturally a piece of cake. "You can go back now." Yu Qianqiu pointed at the elder sent by the Allure Seductress and said rudely. He had lost 2 nascent soul experts, so he could not be polite even if he wanted to. That person cupped his hands in the air, not daring to say anything. If he angered Bai Suzhen, his life would be in danger as well. He quickly flew away. Before leaving, he glanced at the golden word hero on the black flag. When Bai Suzhen stood by Yu Qianqiu's side, Yu Qianqiu's face was still gloomy, as if he was still angry. At the side, Guan Yu cupped his fists and called out, "Sister Bai." Bai Suzhen nodded at him, and quietly guarded beside Yu Qianqiu. Guan Yu didn't say anything else, and ordered his subordinates to quickly clean up the battlefield. After everyone returned to Utopia with their spoils of war, they rested for a while before setting off again. With the previous example, Yu Qianqiu no longer had any hope for the people sent by the allure beauty. Bai Suzhen changed into a black outfit that accentuated her curves, and a black veil covered her face as she followed Yu Qianqiu to fight. Everyone had already seen Bai Suzhen's means. Now that they saw Sister Bai change into her attire and fight personally, they were immediately filled with confidence. In the subsequent battles, Bai Suzhen would personally take action against the Tribulation Transcendence Elders of the Deluo Sect's Spirit Stone Mines. She would usually finish off her opponents in 1 or 2 exchanges. As for the elders sent by the Allure Beauty, they were sent by Yu Qianqiu to put out the fire. If there was a slightly tough spot that threatened the safety of his team members, or made it difficult for them, the elder would immediately rush over. After using it, he would immediately chase them away. The elders usually didn't dare to have any objections. The key was that one of the black-robed masked women was too powerful. She was actually at the late stage of the Tribulation Transcendence stage. In less than a day, the Deluo Sect's 15 Spirit Stone Mines and Ong Kwangsung's 6 Spirit Stone Mines had all been looted. There were more than a dozen piles of spoils of war in Utopia, and it would probably take more than a day to sort them out. In this battle, they had lost 5 nascent soul cultivators and 13 core formation cultivators, a total of 18 members. Yu Qianqiu's heart ached terribly. Fortunately, more than 4,000 people had come in at once. Most of them were miners from the 21 Spirit Stone Mines, which was more than 10 times the original number. Seeing so many people, Yu Qianqiu's mood finally improved. In the following period of time, Yu Qianqiu didn't leave Utopia at all. He didn't even have time to flirt with Chu Ping. He was extremely busy with Guan Yu. With more people, there were naturally more things to sort out. As the chief instructor, Guan Yu was busy and happy. Originally, he had more than 300 people under him, but now, he had nearly 5,000 people under him. The feeling was naturally different. On the same day, Yu Qianqiu summoned Guan Yu, Chen Feng, and the 3 company commanders to a meeting to discuss the issue of the nearly 5,000 people. After some discussion, Yu Qianqiu made a decision. Everyone was divided into 48 companies, with 3 companies forming a battalion. There would be a total of 16 battalions. One of the battalions would be given to Chen Feng to help him with logistics. After all, with more people, Chen Feng would also have to increase his manpower. Otherwise, the logistics would not be able to keep up. Chen Feng naturally had no objections to this, but he asked Yu Qianqiu to give him a backbone who was good at management. Most of his attention was on crafting talismans, refining weapons, and refining pills. How could he have the time to manage so many people? Yu Qianqiu handed this matter over to Guan Yu. Guan Yu generously called a platoon commander over and announced his promotion to battalion commander on the spot to help Chen Feng manage the group of people under him. When the platoon commander heard that he was going to leave the combat unit to handle logistics, he was clearly unwilling. Even a fool would know that with so many people, he would definitely be promoted. The atmosphere in the Hero Special Forces was one where fighting was an honor. Who would be willing to go to the logistics department? However, he had no choice. After all, the few powerhouses of Utopia thought highly of him. After thinking about it, he felt that it was an honorable thing to do, so he reluctantly agreed. However, he also made a request. He requested that he bring 3 people from the old team members to help him manage. Otherwise, it would be a little troublesome to rely on one person. Naturally, the powerhouses had no objections to this. Of course, this was only a small part of the story. The remaining 15 battalions were divided into 5 regiments, with each regiment having 3 battalions. 3 company commanders were promoted to regiment commanders. Then 2 platoon commanders, who had performed outstandingly in this battle, were specially promoted. Now there were 5 regiment commanders. The 2 people who had been promoted from platoon commanders to regiment commanders were immediately called to participate in the meeting. Head of State Yu Qianqiu announced the appointment of the 5 people on the spot. The 2 people who had suddenly been promoted from platoon commanders to regiment commanders were a little overjoyed. According to the current system, they had been promoted by several levels. The 2 of them thanked the head of state excitedly. This was much more exciting than being in those *T sects in the cultivation world. This meant that the two of them could also participate in such high-level meetings in the future. The 3 regiment commanders, who were originally company commanders, congratulated the two of them. The two of them thanked them reservedly. Back then, the 3 of them were their leaders. Never in their dreams would they have imagined that they would be on the same level as them now. After confirming the candidates for regiment commanders, Yu Qianqiu continued to host the meeting. He ordered Guan Yu and the 5 regiment commanders to start selecting the battalion commanders from the original Hero Special Forces. The criteria for selection were: first, the person had outstanding performance in the Spirit Stone mine robbery. Second, the person's cultivation level. Finally, the person's commanding ability under the same conditions. After an intense discussion, Guan Yu and the 5 regiment commanders finally confirmed the candidates for 3 battalion commanders. A total of 15 battalion commanders were promoted. After deciding on the candidates for battalion commanders, the meeting continued to expand. They screened the candidates for company commanders again. After some discussion, the 45th company commander was revealed. After the meeting ended, Guan Yu gathered all the team members in the field. The thousands of people who were captured listened at the back. The women under Bai Suzhen were guarding the perimeter. They looked inside curiously, wondering what was going on. Yu Qianqiu stood on one side of the stage and looked at the group of people below. His emotions surged. The more people there were, the better. Didn't a great man in his previous life say, "There is strength in numbers"? The more people there were, the better it would be in the cultivation world. Chief Instructor Guan Yu stood in the middle of the stage and began to announce the orders. Behind him stood the 5 regiment commanders in a row. When the names of the 15 battalion commanders were called out, there was a warm applause below the stage. It was the same when the 45th company commander was appointed. After the orders were announced, Guan Yu announced the process of the appointment. Those who were not selected, but had similar cultivation levels, were instantly annoyed. If they had known this would happen, they would have risked their lives during the robbery. Sigh! How enviable! It was a great honor to be personally appointed by the head of state. The women under Bai Suzhen looked at the members who were promoted, and their faces were filled with admiration. The team members also accepted the congratulations from their teammates excitedly. The enthusiastic atmosphere made the captives envious. For a moment, the entire field was filled with applause and congratulations. In the end, Guan Yu ordered the 5 regiment commanders again. He gave them half a day to confirm and report the platoon commanders and squad leaders of their subordinates as soon as possible. He also assigned the thousands of captives to their respective subordinates. The 5 regiment commanders accepted the order, and the intense work of assigning people began. As for the person belonging to Chen Feng, who was promoted from platoon commander to battalion commander, he picked 3 old team members who had not been promoted to be company commanders. The 3 old team members immediately rolled their eyes and sent him off. They were not too willing to go to the logistics department. If they went to the logistics department, there would be no more battles to fight, and the next chance to gain merit would be gone. That person did not care so much. He laughed and said, "From today onwards we are brothers in hardship. Don't be long-winded and follow me." Therefore, he took over 300 captives and left with Chen Feng dejectedly. After the personnel were allocated, Yu Qianqiu first ordered the construction of a Utopia Hero Monument. On this day every year, it would be used to remember the members who had died in battle for Utopia. In the future, as long as there were members who had died in the line of duty, they would be buried in the cemetery behind the monument for everyone to pay their respects. In the following days, Yu Qianqiu was still very busy. He had to implement the marriage policy that he had promised everyone as soon as possible. He also had to expand and renovate the barracks, as well as the treatment of officers at all levels, as well as the training plan for the future. Utopia began an unprecedented construction project. Other than building barracks, they also had to build villas of different levels for officers at the battalion level and above. Yu Qianqiu's idea was that since there were so many levels, He should let his subordinates who had reached a certain level enjoy a certain level of treatment. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.